Pub presents their Every Folking Monday night music showcase featuring a different artist every week. Tonight's featured act is Rodney Brown. It runs from 7 to 10 p.m. There's no cover and it's suitable for all ages. On Tuesday, October 15th, Cheers Village Pub presents their all-ages open mic night. It runs from 8 to 11 p.m. There's no cover. And on Wednesday, October 16th, Sloan returns to Thunder Bay, playing inside of Envy Nightclub, presented by Lafredo and Associates. It starts at 8 p.m. Cover is $25. It's for the 19+.
For more details and a complete listing of what's happening in our city, go to tbshows.com. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned to CILU 102.7 FM.
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm CILU, and you're listening to 102.7 Deepfakes on Layman Pascal FM. I'm your host, the Cinematic Asylum. Now, please let me tell you something you probably already know. Things are not what they used to be. Today, we're talking deepfakes, artificial video, and audio recordings in the age of fake evidence. But we'll get into that tangentially by a quick dodge sideways, brought to you today by our sponsor, the 2019 Dodge Sideways. Now, stay with me on this. The writings of legendary sci-fi mystic Philip K. Dick are profoundly concerned with identity. No, not identity in the shallow contemporary sense of your political group identity or your self-congratulatory, self-reflective waking state egotism in your so-called name, but more deeply and more profoundly, identity in the sense of the what really is it-ness of anything. Anything might turn out to be anything else in a Philip K. Dick story, and that's where we're going with all of this, into the Philip K. Dickian age of the isness or not of anything. You know, I used to tell people in the old-fashioned times that the old question-facing literature was the question of human self-consciousness. In literature from, say, Don Quixote up to Fight Club, there is this question of who are we, an attempt to hold a mirror up to the human self-condition. And modern literature in the form of James Joyce and Gertrude Stein and all those other folks who started providing very humanized, very detailed accounts of individual stream of consciousness perspectives really brought this issue of self-identity into the foreground in the early 20th century. For a few hundred years now, and sporadically in the more distant past, we've been trying to think our way into ourselves. Trying to think our way past mythic membership, group populist narratives, and political states and village folklore into some kind of more textured and self-reflective meditation upon the status and possibilities of the sapient individual. Who am I? Every great literary protagonist seems to have been on some journey of self-discovery in fulfillment of the Socratic dictum to know thyself. The unexamined life supposedly not worth living, and of what does the examination consist if not an inquiry into the nature, roots, parts, sources, and effects of my self-identity? Who am I? Who are we? How long has our species stood before this mirror, and how many interesting things have we noticed in this mirror of self-reflective inquiry into the mystery of who we are? So I'm not denigrating that search, even though it would be funny if I did. If I said things like, hell, identity's for chumps. That's right, you heard me. Chumps, not champs, but chumps, not even chimps, just chumps. Identity chumps. Self-identity chumps. Yeah, you know who you are. Nevertheless, I am deeply interested in the possibility that we are pivoting toward a new and even stranger inquiry than the question of self-identity. Our self-investigation took place in a context of thinking that the world around us was essentially known, either by science or by God or by the ancestors. It was a fairly settled world. It was eternal or repetitive or created in the first beginning according to a definite set plan. Rocks are rocks, houses are houses, queens are queens. Your nose is where God put it, and the law is the law. Nailed it, locked it down. We are all born, wed, and dead while the cats eat the rats and the frogs croak upon the logs. Nature is familiar and obvious, and so our attention turns away from its obviousness toward the unique mystery of our own self-consciousness. Yet, what if it were not the case that nature is familiar and obvious? What if the things of the world are not as settled as we thought? What if it wasn't so settled that we could jump past it to the question of self-identity? The great intellectual achievement of evolutionary theory, Darwin, Lamarck, and the boys put us all in confrontation with the fact that the forms we see around us are changing. Things aren't what they used to be. Different creatures previously lived here, creatures you have never seen, creatures your ancestors and the authors of your holy books have never seen. Maybe some of these creatures turned into you, or into bats, or into cats, or into Philip K. Dicks. Today, evolutionary thinking and the scientific reconstruction of past eons puts us face to face with a mystery about the most obvious-seeming things in our environment. We still want to say a rock is a rock is a rock, but we're also told now from our earliest childhood now that these rocks were formed in the alchemical stars by flaming space dust a billion years ago. We're told the Earth, which feels so central and stable, is not at the center of things. It is in fact whirling and spinning and surging and looping and spiraling in so many directions of motion that it's non-intuitive to even try to imagine how we are actually situated in empty space, which, of course, we are also told is not empty, a space which Einstein tells us is flexible and stretchable and moving. So much stuff that seemed solidly well known is now up in the air for grabs and sliding away from us in all directions. But new cosmological mysteries were just the beginning of the great unknowing of the world of things. We discovered a great deal about optical illusions, cognitive fallacies, and the neurological mechanisms which hallucinate reality for us from incoming electromagnetic data. We discovered that the obvious evidence of our senses and our common sense about what we are seeing and hearing in the world is almost completely false. Useful sometimes, obviously, but not accurate, not the truth. We used to say things like, seeing is believing. Now, who anymore could say such a simple sentence with a simply straight face and a good conscience? Seeing and hearing and touching is not at all a reliable source of simple, accurate information about the world of things, apparently, but it's also all we have most of the time. Things now are less known. Things themselves begin to strike us as puzzles. The experiences that previously gave us the feeling of direct knowing now give us the feeling of suspicion and mystery and complexity. We are assured by a relentless parade of physicists that the smallest and most basic particles of the physical universe are either undecided or hyperdimensional or simultaneously singular and plural. But not only all of that, we also have computers now. That is to say, we have machines that simulate other things. Your computer pretending to be a phone is also a computer pretending to be a camera, or is it a calculator? Your car is a radio, and it's speaking telepathically to your phone, camera, Walkman as it begins to drive itself. What are things now? It's not obvious what anything is anymore, if it can almost look like anything else thanks to digital simulation and endless customization. A nanny cam is a security camera that looks like a teddy bear. Joke shops sell fake dog poop. The military makes tiny drones that look like birds and bugs. Bob has a pig heart. Lisa had her pancreas replaced by a 3D printed plastic super pancreas. Jenny is a girl who used to be a boy, and her house is protected by fake wood siding made of plastic. She rides a new bicycle designed on purpose to look old-timey and paid someone extra money to sell her some denim pants that were artificially made to look ripped up and faded. Her neighbor Paul used to think he was really a girl, but changed his mind, which angered a lot of his friends for some reason. He just ordered a lifelike sex robot through the mail from Asia, and while he was at it, he got a couple really nice door handles that look like fish and a refrigerator that looks like an outdated soft drink vending machine. Never before in history has it been so easy for so many things to look like so many other things. Never has it been more possible to doubt the identity of anything at all. And that's probably why we've become so insistent about identities. This is the heart of Philip K. Dick novels and stories. He's no longer asking the old literary questions of who are I and who am we. He's asking a question that might turn out to be much more profound and far-reaching. He's asking, what is anything, man? Blade Runner is based on Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, in which Harrison Ford has to kill machines that look and sound and feel exactly like people in a world where so many animals have died that people own robot animals as status symbols. If you see a sheep or parrot or snake, you always have to ask, is it real? Is it real? Is it what it seems to be? The film Scanner Darkly with Keanu Reeves, Winona Ryder, Woody Harrelson, and Robert Downey Jr. is based on Dick's novel of the same name, in which the protagonist can no longer tell what's real about anything. Are his brain hemispheres competing? Is he addled by drugs? Is there a vast conspiracy? Or is it just that no things can be trusted to be what they seem to be anymore? Today, people pride themselves on thinking dynamically, of thinking of processes rather than things, of thinking of reality as a verb rather than a noun. Sure, pat yourself on the back for that little conceptual maneuver, but maybe it's not such an achievement to think that way. Maybe it just means your heart can no longer trust solid things to be themselves anymore. In Total Recall, based on Philip K. Dick's short story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, we find obviously that our memories are not necessarily our memories. The people we know might not turn out to be the people we know, and even our bodies might be tricks of some kind. The old Hindu and Buddhist concept of Maya as the energetic illusion of life is extended beyond just our delusional thought patterns and feelings to our very perceptions and beyond to the very nature of things themselves. And it's not the simple meditative atheist's story that the self is just an illusion within the scientific materialist world. That's the old idea that things are reliable and psychology is a mystery. No, it's the much bigger problem that everything might be as much an illusion as the self. Philosophers and tech billionaires now tell us we might be living in a computer simulation. Realistic 3D holograms now exist. Seeing is definitely not believing. And the latest iteration of this problem is the ever-increasing ambiguity of things found in deepfakes. These are convincing video and audio recordings of things that never happened. Of course, it has long been the case that we have had the technology digitally to make fake images and doctor tape recordings, but now that technology is easy, cheap, and widespread. You can simply download an app that switches one person's face with another or makes any voice you like say anything you like. Although we know this, and honestly we should have known it decades ago, there are lots of people who are either naive or perhaps old enough to still think that most of their information is relatively reliable and consistent. They are somewhat impervious to the fact that you absolutely cannot trust images, videos, or audio recordings anymore. These do not constitute proof. A video of someone doing something is not reliable evidence that that person did that very thing. How's that for the ambiguity of things, Philip K. Dick? Here's the Danish National Symphony Orchestra doing their version of Vangelis from Philip K. Dick's Blade Runner soundtrack.
Enhance 34 to 46. Pull back. Wait a minute. Go right. Stop. Enhance 57 to 19. Track 45 left. Stop. Enhance 15 to 23. Give me a hard copy right there.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time.
Jordan Peele created this fake video of President Obama to demonstrate how easy it is to put words in someone else's mouth.
Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet.
Not everyone bought it, but the technology behind such frauds is rapidly improving, even as worries increase about their potential for harm. This is your Bloomberg Quick Take on deepfakes. Deepfakes, or realistic-looking fake videos and audio, gained popularity as a means of adding famous actresses into porn scenes. Despite bans on major websites, they remain easy to make and find. They're named for the deep learning artificial intelligence algorithms that make them possible. Input real audio or video of a specific person, the more the better, and the software tries to recognize patterns in speech and movement. Introduce a new element like someone else's face or voice, and a deepfake is born.
It's actually extremely easy to make one of these things. There were just some supposed, breakthroughs from academic researchers who work with this particular kind of machine learning in the past few weeks, which would drastically reduce the amount of video you need actually to create one of these.
Programs like FakeApp, the most popular and widely available for making deepfakes, need dozens of hours of human assistance to create a video that looks like this, rather than this. In August, researchers at Carnegie Mellon revealed software that accurately rendered not just facial features, but changing weather patterns and flowers in bloom. This advance is not yet available to the public. But with increasing capability comes increasing concern.
This is kind of fake news on steroids, potentially. We do not know of a case yet where someone has tried to use this to perpetrate a kind of fraud or an information warfare campaign, or for that matter, to really damage someone's reputation. But it's the danger that everyone is really afraid of.
In a world where fakes are easy to create, authenticity also becomes easier to deny. People caught doing genuinely objectionable things could claim evidence against them is bogus. Fake videos can also be difficult to detect, though researchers around the world and at the US Department of Defense have said they're working on ways to counter them. Deepfakes do, however, have some positive uses. Take Cereproc, a firm that creates digital voices for people who lose theirs from disease.
Speech synthesis is the artificial production of human speech.
There are also applications that could be considered either good or bad, like the many, many deepfakes that exist solely to turn as many movies as possible into Nicolas Cage movies.
Oh, hi, Mark. What could be easier? It's all alphabetical. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Huh? That's all you have to do.
Very good. You know your alphabet.
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
That was Bloomberg News and Nicolas Cage and Chico Marx. I'm Layman Pascal, and you're listening to Cinematic Asylum on CILU 102.7, and we're talking deepfakes and the problem of identity today. Probably one of the reasons people seem so fixated nowadays on identity and identity politics and establishing identity groups is the simple fact that identity itself has never been so obviously unstable, untenable, and unreliable. This is the epoch in which we had to coin the phrase identity theft. We might as well suppose that the concern many people have about cultural representations could be an allergic reaction to the fact that representations are less significant than they have ever been at any point in the history of the world. And that's becoming more true each day. Kali Yuga logic has begun to apply. Today it seems like hardly anyone doubts the fact or is courageous enough to publicly say it doesn't matter how you or your identity group is represented in the media. How dare a black man pretend to be an Asian man in a movie that is itself nothing but pretend? How dare a white woman pretend to be an actual albino by putting sunscreen over her body? How dare a bisexual be hired to play a transsexual taxi driver on the planet Neptune? So some people who are completely against segregation in real life are also interestingly in favor of segregation when it comes to representations in the media. Why do we feel like representation is such a worrying issue? It's hardly a coincidence, I assume, that the urge of Hispanic Scientologists to be represented in film and television by authentic Hispanic Scientologists comes to us at exactly the same historical moment that the totally convincing computer-generated characters are now completely available and acting side by side with real humans in movies and TV shows. Does it not make sense that our complete inability to trust representations is causing us to freak out about the reliability of representations? Or maybe it's just me. I gotta stop listening to my friend Doug. His brain has been addled by way too much YouTube and slightly too much methamphetamines. He thinks Hillary Clinton runs a shady cabal of perverse and profligate pedophiles who torture young children in order to extract the emergency chemical adrenochrome that their bodies secrete into their bloodstreams in situations of terror and torment. Completely preposterous, of course, wink. Although he did send me a link to a video of Hillary Clinton's face and voice totally confessing to that exact crime, so now I don't know what to think anymore.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
I DM'd the deepfake guy.
Yeah?
And because I was like, is it hard? Because it's terrifying. Someone said...
Jamie did it. Jamie used the software to make one with me with Trump's head.
Was it easy?
Yes. Very easy.
I was talking to somebody about it, and they said, it bums me out in the way death used to bum me out when I was a little kid. It's like, wow. But I know what he means. It's just like unfathomable, like, oh, this is not good.
Show him the one you made. Check this out.
He said
Look at this.
China is, quote, not competition for us, for the U.S.
Look at this.
Are you talking about which vice president?
I'm sorry, former Vice President Biden. I apologize.
The current vice president is much more talented.
He actually looks like Joey Diaz.
Dude, that looks like me if I was fat and I had a crazy haircut. That's me.
Everyone's competition. I view everybody as competition.
There he is. Sometimes
Dude, that's so good.
How long did it take for real?
It's about I was teaching myself how to do it, really.
Right.
So, like, this version I let it run overnight because there's a little bit of what the machine learning kind of thing is doing. The longer you let that run, the better it is what I've been learning. So this was just my test of like 8 hours, maybe 6 hours.
But you could have multiples going at once.
Yeah, once I made this version of Joe,
they're in the hopper.
The crazy thing is porn. They're doing that with gals. They're taking like,
I love that you've used the word gals twice.
I love that word. I love it.
This is a good time to bring this up because I just saw something today, literally, and it has to do with this, and I don't know if this is real.
Smoke a rainbow, a halo out, a UFO light, a hologram, a lazy song of sailor's mind, a custodian of love, the blue steel power, and the tower solution. Simon see sincerely the pollution from a holiday on a holiday on a holiday daily on a holiday daily.
Joe Rogan and then Timber Timbre with Sincerely Future Pollution. Speaking of pollution, population, here's an interesting facet of the what is anything anymore problem. How good are our brains at determining what reality is anyway? You know, the North American population, not pollination or pollution, is already fairly aged. Most of the money and most of the medical care is going to folks in the last few decades of their lives, and they're about to be joined by a huge wave of senior citizens in countries like China. Think about that for a moment. In a couple of years, the majority of the people on the internet are going to be Chinese and East Indian senior citizens. And while we all know that some great, healthy old people exist, we also know that ill health, outdated ideas, loneliness, over-medication, and an increasing disregard for the fate of the world is disturbingly common among many elderly. Who are the Fox News viewers? Who's falling for telemarketing scams? Who is likely to click on a link that it looks like someone they know sent them? Who's likely to forget that the message they just received is probably from a robot pretending to be a human? Who's likely to pass on an inflammatory and obviously political lie without really reading it first? Everyone is vulnerable to these things, of course, but older and less healthy brains who are less in touch with the current information sources are often much more likely to become sources of unwitting contagion in a world where pictures and words and articles and videos and headlines and names can absolutely not be trusted to be telling you the facts about reality. Things ain't what they used to be, and maybe they never were. Some folks I seem to recall were amazed by the fact that obvious lies, contradictions, obscenity, and crimes were not enough to prevent a dangerously wacky reality TV host and real estate con man from becoming leader of the so-called free world. Many of these astonished people were literate, well-read, well-traveled, sensitive folks who grew up in a time when it seemed like academic and professional standards were moving us forward in tandem with a great cultural awakening of empathy and tolerance. And although that did sort of happen, it then came to a diabolically disconcerting disruption to their reality when the American political system selected a person who, for good or ill, seems indifferent to evidence. News was now dismissed as fake news, and you can barely tell it apart from the obviously fake news with that kind of contextual framing. Private things are said publicly. Statements made moments ago are flat out denied. Presenting folks like this with audio or video evidence of their own actions and articulations does not make them feel caught in lies, contradictions, or trapped in hypocritical inconsistency. He just shrugs them off and improvises whatever he thinks sounds better at the moment, and why not? Why wouldn't he behave in exactly this fashion when we absolutely cannot trust documentation anymore? Hoax papers rise through academia to its highest ranks. Every amateur YouTuber can promote their own ideology now as a fact, and any image, video, or audio recording might be a deepfake. In fact, the moment is almost upon us when any data about you that you don't like can be plausibly dismissed as deepfake fake news gotcha moves, deepfake fake news gotcha moves, deepfake fake news gotcha moves, deepfake fake news gotcha moves.
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
CILU is supported in part by the students of Lakehead University, our sponsors, and our listeners. At this time, we would like to thank the following sponsors for their continuous support.
The Rec and Culture Division of Thunder Bay, bringing free events to the waterfront in all of Thunder Bay. Check out thunderbay.ca/events for more info on their upcoming community events and follow them on Facebook. Joey's Restaurant, a tasty little place for seafood, located at 595 Arthur Street West. Visit them on Tuesdays for all-you-can-eat fish and chips, Thursdays $4 tacos, and kids eat free Saturdays. Some conditions apply. The Thunder Bay Blues Fest, Log on to tbayblues.ca to keep up with all the news on Thunder Bay's largest annual music festival, entering its 19th year in 2020.
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? We used to think our own eyes had the edge on that one, but how can we be sure now? Today's paranoid conspiracy theorists may just be adapting faster than the rest of us to a world in which it is almost impossible to make reality-based consensus paradigms, and so we may have no choice but to migrate toward half-informed mythological paradigms. Deleuze and Guattari speculated in the 20th century that schizophrenia might not be a mental illness, but might instead represent a natural adaptation to modern civilization. Well, in the 21st century, it's starting to look like paranoia is the more natural adaptation to the technological, economic, and scientific world we see around us. I mean, if you're skeptical about authorities and skeptical about religion and skeptical about experts and skeptical about governments and skeptical about your food and skeptical about your town and skeptical about human beings in general and skeptical about your own beliefs and skeptical about your own eyeballs, what are you going to do? It's either Buddhism or paranoia or both. Unless a great transvaluation of values is on the horizon, we're going to have to live in the dark cloud of the last man who, as it says in Thus Spake Zarathustra, sees the stars and blinks and asks, "What is a star?" and feels love and blinks and shrugs and says, "What is love?" Genius and madness both seem to be predicated in part upon the possibility of disbelieving most of the things you see and hear. But are we moving more toward genius, or are we moving more toward madness?
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
We're exploring. We're trying to find out as much as we can about the world. People say to me, are you looking for the ultimate laws of physics? No, I'm not. I'm just looking to find out more about the world. And if it turns out there is a simple ultimate law that explains everything, so be it. That would be very nice to discover. If it turns out it's like an onion with millions of layers and we're just sick and tired of looking at the layers, then that's the way it is. But whatever way it comes out, its nature is there and she's going to come out the way she is. And therefore, when we go to investigate it, we shouldn't pre-decide what it is we're trying to do, except to find out more about it.
My daughter likes fish. We took her to the aquarium. I took both my kids to the aquarium in Boston, and we were looking at this seal or sea lion. I don't know which one. I don't care. I don't think they need to be separate things. I really don't. They don't care, and we don't care. There's like 3 scientists who give a shit what we call all those things. The scientists could go on TV tomorrow and say, okay, everybody, from now on, seals and sea lions and walruses and you know what, penguins are all seals now. And we would all be like, yeah, whatever, man.
That was Chico Marx, Richard Feynman, and Louis C.K. I'm Layman Pascal, and you're listening to CILU 102.7 FM. This is the Cinematic Asylum. You know, I never tire of remembering or possibly misremembering the opening chapters of the autobiography of Dr. Richard Feynman, quoted above. One of the great scientific and mathematical geniuses of the 20th century and a darn good bongo player, too. Feynman was the youngest scientist on the project to create the atomic bomb. He played a pivotal role in quantum electrodynamics, as we all do sometimes. And he made some of the first speculations about quantum computation while also helping solve the mystery of why the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up in the sky. This guy was a real scientific elder with humor and twinkly eyes and a good conscience about the fact that we know a ton of stuff but don't know a ton of stuff we thought we knew. In his autobiographical book, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, he describes how his father prepared him for education. The wily old dad would teach his son all kinds of facts about birds and trees and bees and dinosaurs. They would calculate whether a dinosaur could reach the upstairs window, and they'd study the social behavior of forest creatures. His father would teach him the names of all the things in many languages, but not in English. Feynman said he was initially embarrassed at school and felt dumb because, unlike the other kids, he didn't even know the very common names for things: blue jay, maple tree, coyote. However, it quickly became obvious that the kids who knew the common names of things sort of stopped thinking there once they could associate a phenomenon with a category they'd heard. And Feynman couldn't stop thinking. He'd been helped to understand that labels and categories are not that significant. You don't really know what things are and in what group they should be. Science or real rationality or real curiosity or real respect for the world began in that household, and maybe more generally, with a disrespect for the idea of what other people call things. An indifference to the groupings of identity that we hear about. Back in olden times, the Taoist sages of China taught us that the way which could be named was not the true way. They practiced naturalistic meditation in which they tried to unlearn or bracket or turn the volume down on associations and categories that they had learned socially. They wanted, like any scientist should, to see with fresh eyes, to see the structure and function of what was before them and to gain understanding without simply surrendering to the addictively easy option of identifying things in standard ways. Today, this is maybe more important than ever. If you can't trust that a news story is a news story, if you can't trust that what you think looks like a woman is a woman, if you can't trust that a videotape of a politician doing something illegal is actually a videotape of that person, if you can't trust that a black man doesn't have white privilege, or that your hamburger meat actually came from a dead animal, or that a doctor's certificate wasn't just printed off on a home computer, then you absolutely need some kind of intelligence, some kind of regular practice that helps you think about the world without the need to be correct about labels and identities and categories. Nothing is less reliable than your immediate sense of what you think everyone else thinks a certain symbol or word or type or group or category represents. Things may not be what they used to be, or even what they seem to be, or even what everyone says they are, but you still have to handle things, whatever they are. Although social media and even TV media wants you to quickly hear a story, imagine the category it fits into, immediately have a positive or negative reaction, and then upload your reaction and stand by to react to the next charged and seemingly obvious category, this is all precisely the kind of thing that we need to train each other not to do. You should hesitate when you receive information, especially digital information. Links, images, and recordings are even more unreliable than your eyeballs, which are well known to be already quite unreliable. Even the most obvious seeming remarks could be tricks. You don't know what that person means by that word. You don't even know it came from a person. Maybe it's robot clickbait designed to trigger you positively or negatively. The very instant you feel a thumbs up or thumbs down response building should be a very suspicious moment for you. If you hear something upsetting or something inspiring about a politician, about a friend, you don't have any reason to think that is the case. Hearing about things, feeling strongly about them, and being able to identify standard normal categories of knowledge related to that apparent topic, it's not yet to be informed about the topic. Today, studies show that the most accurate news comes from comedy news that states openly that it is not a news source. What does that tell you, for example, about the categories of serious versus humorous? Today there is fish DNA in our cucumbers. What does that tell you about the categories of vegetable and animal? Are these reliable identities? In a world of such ambiguity, we need more than ever to be good Taoist natural scientists who intentionally reject our immediate assumptions about the identities of things and spend more time examining form and function with an empty, curious mind. Unless our children are getting an education in that kind of skill set, then we're doing nothing but breeding the next wave of consumer slaves for corporate algorithms and digital manipulators to suck dry. The world itself seems less obvious and less reliable. It tries to exploit people by convincing them that they know what the groups of things are, what the identities of things are, what things are, and how you should feel about them. And that's how you become easier and easier to exploit through digital technology, I guess. You start acting like you're better and better at instantly knowing what people mean, but you don't. Unless the schools and unless the homes and unless the philosophers are helping us to learn the opposite skills, the skills of not knowing what the groups are, the skills of not accepting identities, the skills of not asserting that you know things or that you can trust your eyes or your response, then these schools and these homes are sort of failing the next generations in a rather dramatic fashion. You're either preparing people for a world they cannot believe in, or you are not preparing them for a world they cannot believe in. These are the options.
see him lying there.
This is the city. It's a city of crime. My name is Friday. I carry a badge. 3:15 a.m. Thursday, January 15th. It was chilly that morning in the City of Angels. On this particular occasion, we happened to witness a pagan ritual in progress.
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
Wow, what was all that? That was a bunch of random song openings you probably can't even remember now, and then Harold Faltermeyer's epic 80s synth theme for the movie Fletch, followed by Do Make Say Think with Bound and Boundless. Okay, here's my somewhat disturbing go-to example for how humans relate to images. Brace yourself, this is to thought experiments what a month-old parasite-infested blue whale carcass upwind is to your summer beach party. It stinks, and it's weird. Here's the awful idea. My friend Doug uses a computer program to invent completely artificial depictions of extreme Nazi elder abuse, animal mutilation, and child pornography. He prints them out, he frames them, and he holds an art show. What would happen, aside from Doug instantly becoming a famous artist? Well, people would go to see the show and find themselves standing in front of the question of where and when to treat images as if they were realities. Normally, the problem with, say, child pornography is that we rightly connect it to the topic of child sexual exploitation. When it turns out the vice principal or the vice cardinal or the vice president or the dapper vice grip salesman has 9 gigabytes of images of naked 9-year-olds on his outdated hard drive, we treat that quite reasonably as suggestive evidence that this person may have pedophilic tendencies or be in contact with people who do. His or her computer is a reasonable one for the police to monitor in their attempt to thwart the sexual abuse and exploitation of minors. That's the danger we're trying to prevent. The danger is not the existence of the images themselves. The danger is that these images are connected to actual dangers beyond the realm of mere representation. It is somewhat superstitious to blame the pictures for the deeds, but of course we tend to do this. Many people have been arrested for the mere possession of upsetting images. We get a little confused because the emotional and moral rawness of and the seriousness of the topic blur the category lines for us. We feel we shouldn't take any chances with such serious matters, and so we start treating pictures as if they were basically the same things as the crimes depicted in the images. But that's not the case down at Doug's Disturbing World O' Art. And I told him that was a terribly gauche name for an art exhibit, but that guy never listens, at least not to anything that isn't on YouTube. Any hoozles, Doug made these images pixel by pixel, or maybe he pushed a button and a computer algorithm rendered them into existence from nothingness. To our eyes, they are indistinguishable from photographs of actual children or actual anybody's being actually abused, but our minds know this is absolutely false. No crimes were committed here. No one was injured. No criminal networks were involved. The images are utterly innocent of any real-world danger. Put quite simply, they are not representations of anything. They do not represent actualities. So imagine, you poor soul, you blunder into Doug's art show. How do you feel? Can your brain really separate out the idea that these are not photographs of people or events that actually happened? Or does your brain get so concerned and hasty it just doesn't care and disregards the difference between image and reality in this important case? Of course, in reality, it would vary from person to person. It's probably a skill many people never think they even need to work on, the skill of carefully separating your response to the general implications of seemingly real content from your response to actual reality. Like I said, the utility of this weird analogy is that it takes the scenario to its moral extreme. Far less worrisome is the idea that an image of a tree is not really a tree, or a pipe is not really a pipe. And even though a cigar is sometimes just a cigar, it does not therefore follow that whatever looks exactly like a cigar is a cigar, at least not exactly. We care a lot about child sexual abuse, and we don't care that much about cigars and trees, and probably somewhere between those is a video of the Prime Minister eating from a can of delicious baby seal meat in an overly enthusiastic Nazi rally. But what does it mean if you see that video of the Prime Minister? If I tell you it's a digital hoax, or if I tell you it really happened, you enter quite validly into different reference frames. That's how it should be. That's what communication does. But at the same time, I showed you the exact same thing in both cases. That's more than a bit suspicious. Now, can you trust me if I say that's a hoax or that's a fact? What are you going to do? Just believe people like yourself, or disbelieve everything, or believe everything just in case it's true? Maybe join author Neil Stephenson in his request that Google generate a fact-verifying algorithm for use in ambiguous situations where you don't immediately know what's gone on in reality. That's where the word fact comes from. It means after the act. A justice of the peace arrives in a small town a few weeks after a crime and has to sort out the situation from amongst the tangle of lies, self-deception, superstitions, evidence, and fake evidence. A strategy is needed after the act, after the fact, in a world where it is obvious that the truth is not obvious, regardless of what feels like it's obviously true. You don't have a lot of options, really. You cannot abandon the idea of truth and reality. You need those things. Neither, however, can you just believe things just because you've seen convincing images or recordings. That's widely proven now. You have to accept that any piece of evidence, any story, any bit of news, any image, no matter how compelling or distressing, might be real or not, might be partly real and or partly not real. You need a strategy to handle all that situation. A strategy that leaves you open to possible reality and its consequences, but protects you from immediately acting as if what you've just seen or heard is likely to be true just because you just saw and or heard it. You need a strategy that knows it could be wrong. A strategy that tries to find more truth as it goes forward without needing to tell itself that it has found the whole truth and nothing but the truth, or even the identity of anything. And if you're sworn into court and asked to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you might want to tell that judge, no, how could I possibly do that? And how could he possibly believe you? Maybe I'm not even really here, man. Things are not what they used to be. Deepfakes today on the Cinematic Asylum on CILU 102.7 FM. I've been Layman Pascal, and here's Dapper Dan.
Gentlemen, do you ever find yourself at social gatherings wishing you had that slick, smooth hair that you see in the moving pictures?
Yeah.
Deepfakes exist now. Deepfakes exist now.
I'm a Dapper
There's
Dan
no
man.
going back. They're not hypothetical
I'm a Dapper
and
Dan
preventable
man.
like a
I'm a Dapper
face-off
Dan man.
remake no one asked for.
I don't
Well, the
want
primarily
this
dark implications of
Dapper
deepfakes
Dan.
the primarily dark the implications concept of of deepfakes porn do involve the concepts. They actually have little to do with celebrities or politics. They actually have little to do with social media and the way we consume. More to do with social media and the way we consume facts. The sad truth is that we don't need. The sad truth is that we don't need to be convinced by blatant lies. To be completely convinced by blatant lies.
I'm a Dapper Dan man.
Deepfakes exist now. Deepfakes exist now. Only in a terrifyingly accessible program available to literally anyone. Why? Why must this be our future? What do we do with such a powerful new visual trickery? So yeah, it's f***ing tricky, man. A world of sophisticated smear campaigns that put fake words in the mouths of public figures, or easily dupe people with deepfake scams, as explained here.
But how we move forward, age of information,
there, we're in a tight spot.
Gonna be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of f***ed up dystopia.
Damn.
Thanks, Obama.
We're in a tight spot.
I certainly wouldn't forcibly take his face, is my point here. That would be rude. So yeah, it's f***ing tricky, man. Simply put, a deep fake is that scene in Forrest Gump where they meticulously reanimated JFK's face to interact with Tom Hanks. I certainly wouldn't forcibly take his face, is my point here. That would be rude. Are deep fakes legal? The short answer is, mostly, yes. Anywho, those are the most obvious
I'm a Dapper Dan man.
threats you've no doubt heard about. Porn of people who do not want to be in porn, and political propaganda. And as of right now, you're most likely on the fence about whether deep fakes are a dystopian harbinger or just another media scare. So yeah, it's f***ing tricky,
I'm a Dapper Dan man.
Are deep fakes legal? The short answer is, mostly, yes. That sucks a lot, and it needs to be fixed. But also it needs to be fixed correctly. And this is where we get into a difficult discussion, because even though deepfakes seem like the beginning of an inevitable dystopia, our reaction to deepfakes, as well as our attempts to regulate them, might actually be worse if we're not careful. Deepfakes exist now. Deepfakes exist now. I certainly wouldn't forcibly take his face, is my point here. That would be rude.
I'm a Dapper Dan man.
Superior Art Gallery presents The Hunger 14, Saturday, October 26th. Enter the multiverse of the largest music and performance spectacle you'll ever experience. One night, one massive downtown-wide Halloween festival event featuring 50 acts and thousands in costume prizes. $20 gets you into all 8 venues: the Foundry, Black Pirates Pub, El Trez, the Sovereign Room, Atmos, Redline Smokehouse, and the Paramount. 2,500 attended last year, so treat yourself to the wildest, slickest Halloween you'll ever experience. The Hunger 14, Saturday, October 26th. Doors are at 9 p.m., cover is $20, it's for the 19+. A Deaf's Up fundraiser for the contemporary arts. Sponsored by LU Radio 102.7 FM. For more info, visit Facebook or definitely.superior.com.
CILU is supported in part by the students of Lakehead University, our sponsors, and our listeners. At this time, we would like to thank the following sponsors for their continuous support.
Copperfin Credit Union, Northwestern Ontario's largest locally owned credit union. Experience the convenience of their mobile banking app and online financial solutions anywhere, anytime. Copperfin Credit Union, life forward. Sarah Curtin, your neighborhood realtor. She's on top of what's happening at Thunder Bay's Market, and she'll help you buy or sell your home. Call or text her anytime at 630